I sold my emotions 3 years ago for $2 million, and now I can't feel anything. Not sadness, not joy, not fear, nothing. I watch people cry at movies, and I don't understand what they're experiencing. I see couples holding hands, and I know intellectually that's supposed to mean something. But I feel absolutely nothing when I look at them. And yesterday, I found the woman who bought my emotions. And she's living the life I was supposed to have with feelings that used to be mine. Let me explain how this works. 3 years ago, I was drowning in medical debt after my sister's cancer treatment bankrupted our family. And I would have done anything to save her even though she died anyway. That's when I saw an ad for Emotion Solutions, a company that buys and sells human emotions through this experimental neurological transfer procedure that extracts your emotional capacity and implants it in someone else. They were offering $2 million for a complete emotional profile, enough to cover the debt and start over. And the contract said the transfer was permanent, but reversible if both parties agreed. I signed the paperwork without reading it carefully, because my sister had just died, and I thought maybe not feeling anything would be better than feeling this grief. The procedure took 4 hours. They hooked me up to this machine that mapped my neural pathways and extracted my emotional processing centers. And when I woke up, it was like someone had turned off a switch in my brain. I looked at photos of my sister and felt nothing. Not sadness, not loss, just a vague intellectual understanding that she used to be alive and now she wasn't. At first, I thought it was freedom. I spent 6 months building a business without emotional attachments holding me back. I made decisions based purely on logic. I cut off relationships that weren't profitable. I optimized my entire life. And I became incredibly successful because I wasn't afraid of failure and I wasn't attached to outcomes. But then I started noticing what I'd lost. I went to my best friend's wedding and watched everyone cry during the vows while I stood there wondering why they were leaking from their eyes. When she told me she was pregnant a month later, I said, "That's statistically exciting for you," because I couldn't access whatever emotion I was supposed to feel. She stopped talking to me after that. And then last week I saw her, the woman who bought my emotions. Her name is Claire, and she was sitting in a coffee shop crying over a book, actually crying real tears over fictional characters. And when I approached her and introduced myself, she looked at me with this overwhelming rush of recognition and grief and joy all at once. She said, "Oh my God, you're her. You're the one whose emotions I have." And then she hugged me, and I felt her shaking with feeling, and I felt absolutely nothing in response. She told me that 3 years ago she was diagnosed with emotional processing disorder, a condition where her brain couldn't generate emotional responses naturally, and buying my emotions saved her life. She could finally cry, finally laugh, finally feel love and fear and excitement, and she'd spent 3 years experiencing the world the way I used to experience it. She showed me photos of her wedding, her new daughter, her family, all these moments filled with my emotions that I don't have access to anymore. And when I asked if she'd consider reversing the transfer, she looked at me with what used to be my own grief and said, "I can't go back to being empty. These feelings are the only thing keeping me alive." The contract says reversal requires mutual consent, which means I need her permission to get my emotions back. And she won't give it because returning them to me would destroy everything she's built. She offered me $4 million to let her keep them permanently, double what I was paid originally. So I can take the money and stay numb forever, watch the rest of my life happen from behind this glass wall where nothing touches me. Or I can fight for my emotions back and take away the only thing keeping Claire alive. If I force the reversal, she goes back to that empty existence and I get to feel things again. But I'll have to live with the knowledge that I destroyed her family's happiness to reclaim something I sold voluntarily. If I take the money, she keeps living this full emotional life with my feelings, and I stay in this fog forever. She's waiting for my answer right now, sitting in that coffee shop crying over her daughter's first birthday photos, experiencing joy with neural pathways that used to be mine. And I'm standing outside watching her through the window, trying to remember what happiness feels like and failing. Tell me, if someone was living a full life with emotions you sold in a moment of desperation, would you take them back and destroy their world? Or would you stay empty forever knowing you gave someone else the capacity to feel? Would you choose your own humanity or their happiness, knowing you can't have both? Tell me in the comments because she's waiting for my answer, and I can't feel strongly enough about anything to make this decision. And remember, some transactions can't be undone. For more impossible choices, subscribe to Echo Myra Studios before you forget what feeling anything means.